it's Morgan. Thanks for visiting my channel. If you have a WordPress blog and you've always wanted to add the estimated reading time to the blog, such as you might see on sites like medium.com where they have that average reading time, you can absolutely do that. Best part is you don't need a plugin. With a little bit of PHP, I'm going to show you how you can add this functionality to your WordPress blog, and it'll take you 5 minutes or less. Let's get started. So for this tutorial, I'm going to assume 3 things. One, that you already have a WordPress site or one that you have administrator access to. 2, that you have a little bit of familiarity with PHP or are at least comfortable copying and pasting some PHP code. And 3, that you want to try new things for yourself because you're tired of endless plugins, and good for you because it's super fun doing things yourself. Let's go. So in my test environment, I just took a short story by author Vladimir Nabokov just so we could get a chunk of text that was nice and clean to work with. And what we're going to try and do is create some code that will insert a read time just below the author tagline right around here. So the first place we're going to need to go is into our theme editor section of our backend. I already had it open, but you can get here in your backend by going to Appearance Theme Editor. And we're going to be working directly with the theme's functions.php file. So scroll down to the bottom of the file, make some room for yourself, and here we are going to write some new functions. The first thing we're going to need to do though is find out the average words per minute speed that we're going to use in our calculation. I went to this one website called scholarwithin.com, and they estimate the silent reading time for adults is 238 words per minute, so that's the time I'm going to use. But it's totally dependent on your audience, so just use what you feel comfortable with. Now we're on to the fun part. We're actually going to write some PHP functions. We're going to make 2 new functions. One is going to actually do the reading time calculation for us, and then the second one is going to register a shortcode that's going to call this function and allow us to insert it anywhere we want in our blog posts. So for function number 1, which is going to be our function that does the calculations, I'm just going to give it a descriptive title of site estimated reading time. And this function is going to take 2 parameters. One is going to be the content that we're going to actually do the count on, and the second parameter is going to be the words per minute variable that we're going to use in our calculations. So before we actually do our word count on our content, we want to do a couple of housekeeping things to it just to make sure we're getting an accurate number. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a variable for my content, and I'm going to apply a WordPress function called strip shortcodes, and I'm going to perform this on the content variable that we receive through the parameters, just so we can get rid of any shortcodes that might be lingering in the text because we don't want to count them. So now that our content has been cleaned of shortcodes, I want to do one more cleaning function on it, and I'm going to use the built-in PHP function called strip tags. I'm going to perform this on the variable I've created, and what this is going to do is remove any HTML or PHP code that may exist inside the content itself, as this would also bloat our final word count. Now we're ready to do our actual words per minute count calculation, and you're not going to believe this, but PHP also has another built-in function that helps us with this immensely. It's called str_word_count, and it looks just like this, and if you provide only a single argument, which is the content itself, it returns an integer that represents the number of words in the text that you provided. Super cool, right? So the last thing we have to do, finally, is calculate our reading time. Now that we know the word count, we can divide it by the words per minute variable and get our final time. Now this would work just fine on its own, but what I'm going to do is err on the side of caution and round the final value up to the nearest integer. Just because it's always good to have more time on there than less time, so people feel like faster readers maybe than they are. And to do that, I will use PHP's ceiling function, which turns my float value into a whole number. Now the last thing we have to do is simply return the time that we've calculated. So I'll just write a simple return statement with our time variable, and this function is good to go. So to be able to use this function in our posts, we're going to now write our final function, which will be a new shortcode that we are going to create ourselves and we can use to insert into any of our posts to show the reading time. So I'm just going to give this shortcode function a descriptive name, and it's not going to need any parameters. And basically it's only going to have one real action happening, and that is to call the function we just created using the content of the post. So I'm going to create a new variable called readtime, and it's going to call our custom function and pass in the content of the post by using WordPress's built-in getTheContent function. So now that we have our reading time saved to a variable, the last thing we need is some HTML that we can print to the front end that will actually display it for our readers. So just to save time, I'm going to copy and paste some code I've already prepared, and then we can just go over it quickly so that we understand what's going on. So as you can see, my variable of return text contains a string. It's got a div tag with a class of reading time, which I'm going to use to style the output later. And I've put in my text that says estimated reading time, so many minutes, and the %d is going to come in handy later because what I'm going to do is return the text using the sprintf built-in PHP function, and that's going to take in the argument of my read time and swap it out in that place where the %d is. And the %d simply represents an integer, which means now we're finally ready to register our shortcode and use it in our post. So to do that, we simply need to write add_shortcode, and it's going to take two arguments. The first one is going to be a tag that we use in our shortcode, the square brackets, and the second will be the function that we're going to be referring to, and that is the function, of course, we were just working on. And that's it. Congratulations, you've written your first shortcode and your first bit of PHP to do a custom function. That's awesome. So all you have to do now is save, make sure it saves properly, and now we're ready to go to our post and insert our shortcode. I already have my chosen post open in a new tab, so I'm just going to copy that shortcode tag that we created and pop on over. Now this post is written using the Gutenberg blocks system, so what I'm going to do is just insert a new block below where I want my shortcode to appear and select the shortcode category and just copy and paste, make sure it's got the two square brackets, and then hit update. Now if we pop on over to view our live post, we should be able to see our new estimated reading time. That is, of course, unless we made an error in our code, and it looks like I did. I did not spell strip tags correctly, so I'll just have to pop back and correct that. One moment, my apologies. I always briefly think about editing out my own errors, but sometimes I think too that it's probably good to keep them in because it's elucidating for people to be able to see, what an error message looks like and not be afraid of it and know how to debug by what it says. So I'm going to include it here. So now if we refresh, we should be able to see our read time. And hey ho, looks like we do. And the reason mine is so styled as you see here is because I've already gone ahead and put the styling for my reading-time class into my style sheet. If I scroll down, you can see that I've just got a little bit of styling formatting right here, and that's why it looks like that. So congratulations again, that's all she wrote. So now you can go ahead and play around with your styling. You can put your shortcode wherever you want in your post. You can go back and you can change what it says. So you can see I've got reading time now instead of estimated. You can go ahead and mess around with the words per minute count so you can have different minutes, anything you want. So thanks so much for joining me and hope to see you next time.